What do you get when BMW, Volkswagen and Rolls-Royce walk into a billion-dollar brand war? A luxury car with no name, no engine, and a very awkward ending. This is the story of the Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph, the car that was born in the middle of a corporate tug-of-war and quietly vanished just 4 years later. But how did a car this beautiful become a forgotten ghost? Buckle up, this one's wild. You know how automakers love spending endless hours and insane amounts of cash developing new cars. They pour millions into research, design, testing, and marketing. So naturally, they'd want to squeeze every drop of profit from a new model. But then there's Rolls-Royce, who looked at their Silver Seraph and said, nah, let's do it differently. Now don't get me wrong, the Silver Seraph had a pretty short run, but it made a surprisingly big splash. Now if you caught my last video about the quirky Rolls-Royce Camargue, you already know Rolls isn't afraid to get a bit unconventional. But the Silver Seraph took doing things differently to a whole new level. But before we dive deeper into the Silver Seraph, let's rewind a bit. Because to really understand this car, you've got to meet its predecessor, the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit. Okay, let's rewind a bit. The Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit was actually a big hit for Rolls. They were moving around 1,000 of these things a year, which for Rolls is like selling hotcakes. It was basically a fresh coat of paint on the beloved Silver Shadow. But by the late 80s and early 90s, the Spirit wasn't just getting old, it was practically ancient. Seriously, the thing was built on the Shadow, which was designed back when Elvis was still king. And to make matters worse for Rolls, competition was heating up big time. You had Mercedes casually dropping the sleek new S-Class, BMW showing off the athletic 7 Series, and Lexus arrived like, hey, turns out luxury cars can actually start every morning. Crazy, right? Suddenly the Rolls-Royce Silver Spirit looked less classic and more just old. Clearly it was time for Rolls to retire the Spirit and bring something fresh to the party. But here's the kicker. Rolls-Royce at the time was owned by a defence company called Vickers. And guess what? They weren't exactly swimming in cash. They took one look at the cost of developing a brand new Rolls-Royce from scratch and said, nope, we're not touching that. Instead, they played it smart. Rolls and Bentley would share the same platform. Kinda like siblings forced to share a bedroom to save money. Enter Graham Hull, Rolls-Royce's design boss. Hull loved the 1950s Silver Cloud and decided that cars' graceful, elegant lines were exactly what the new Rolls needed. Basically, he wanted a car that said, I have money, but I'm classy enough not to shout about it. And honestly, he nailed it. The new car, the Silver Seraph, was massive. It could eat a Jaguar XJ for breakfast and still have room for tea. Yet somehow, it managed to be subtle and dignified, the kind of car that whispers, I'm important, but let's not make a fuss about it. Unfortunately, Hull didn't get total control over his baby. Because the Seraph had to share its bones with Bentley, the usually razor-sharp Rolls-Royce grille got rounded off a bit, kind of like someone sanding the edges off your favourite Lego brick. But hey, it actually worked, giving the Seraph a modern twist without losing its Rolls-Royce charm. And just to spice things up even more, BMW showed up right around this time, sniffing around Rolls-Royce with their own ideas for British luxury. They even brought a flashy concept car called the Bentley Java. And when you look closely, you can definitely spot some BMW-inspired DNA sneaking into the Silver Seraph's design. Now, first impressions are everything, right? Well, Rolls-Royce knew this and was pretty excited to partner up with BMW, but they weren't quite ready to tie the knot and hand over the keys completely to the Germans. Instead, they settled on a friends with technological benefits arrangement. Basically, Rolls would get access to BMW's electrical systems and engines. Bentley scored BMW's twin-turbo V8, but Rolls, they went straight for BMW's crown jewel, the silky smooth M73 V12. And finally, in January of '98, after more than 30 years without a totally new Rolls-Royce model, the Silver Seraph was revealed to the world. So here we are, 25 years later, taking it for a spin. Well, let's start under the hood. The Seraph packs BMW's legendary 5.4-litre M73 V12, and calling this engine a masterpiece isn't even doing it justice. It's silky, refined, and whisper quiet. Seriously, you can be cruising at 50 and still barely tell the engine's even running. It's that smooth. It's smoother than your grandpa's favourite jazz playlist and makes Rolls-Royce's old V8 feel about as refined as a tractor. And it's no slouch either. 322 horsepower means if you're late for a business meeting, or more likely your first-class flight, you just plant your foot. And trust me, this car remembers how to hustle. But the engine isn't even the real star here. Yeah, it's cool that this was Rolls-Royce's first V12 since before World War II, but honestly, the Seraph's biggest flex was how incredibly modern it felt. This thing's chassis is 65% stiffer than the old Silver Spirits, and you feel that immediately. Gone are those shakes, rattles and rolls, pun intended. No dashboard creaks, no squeaky leather, and definitely no drama over bumps. It just glides. Even the wind noise got dialed down to library level quiet. Now let's talk suspension, because Rolls didn't mess around here. The Silver Seraph has adaptive suspension, meaning it softens up when you're just chilling, cruising along, but firms up if you suddenly decide you've got somewhere to be quickly. Alright, let's be real. It's still no BMW M5, so don't go chasing sports sedans on twisty roads. But for a 2.5-ton luxury yacht, it holds its own surprisingly well. The steering feels a bit meatier than in the old Silver Spirit, giving you a better sense of what's actually happening up front. Spirited B-road adventures aren't really the Silver Seraph's main party trick. This Rolls is happiest right here, back on the open highway, where you can soak in all that incredible luxury. Sure, when you start poking around, you'll notice lots, and I mean lots, of BMW switchgear. If you spent any time in a 90s BMW, you'll instantly recognise the climate controls, hazard switches, radio buttons, even the steering wheel and stalks, once you strip away the Rolls-Royce glamour. But honestly, once Rolls added its special magic, soft, buttery leather everywhere, gorgeous walnut dash, and seats so comfy they feel like a heated leather sofa, none of that BMW stuff matters. Every single surface feels premium. Even the headliner is wrapped in leather. Plus you get these classy chrome touches everywhere, just subtle little reminders that yes, you're definitely winning at life. The Silver Seraph doesn't have that purebred Rolls-Royce interior charm we saw in the Spirit. But when everything is put together this well, no rattles, no shakes, no buttons randomly going on vacation, I'm perfectly happy having Germans handle the electrical bits. If it works, it works. But here's where the story gets juicy. Back in '98, Vickers decided to put Rolls-Royce up for sale. After their successful partnership, everyone assumed BMW had it in the bag. BMW certainly thought so. They slapped down a hefty £340 million to seal the deal. But hold on, Ferdinand Piëch from Volkswagen, who is basically in world domination mode at this point, swooped in at the last second, threw £430 million onto the table, and boom! Volkswagen owned Rolls-Royce. Or so they thought. Turns out VW hadn't read the fine print. Yeah, they got the factory, the workers, even the designs, but Vickers still owned the rights to the Rolls-Royce name, the legendary Spirit of Ecstasy, and that iconic R logo. Without those, you've basically bought yourself a fancy British shed. And to make things worse, BMW, still pretty salty about losing, politely informed Volkswagen they'd stop supplying their silky V12 engines within a year. So now VW was stuck with a Rolls-Royce they couldn't legally call a Rolls-Royce, powered by an engine they couldn't even build. Awkward, right? Cue one of the biggest legal dramas the automotive world had ever seen. After months of intense negotiations, by July 1998, BMW came out victorious, officially taking ownership of Rolls-Royce. But don't feel too bad for VW. They got to keep Bentley and carried on building the Arnage, the Seraph's twin sister, switching it back to the classic Rolls-Royce 6 3/4 litre V8, the engine the purists wished the Seraph had from the start. BMW quickly got busy down in West Sussex, building an entirely new Rolls-Royce factory to launch their next big thing, the Phantom 7. Unfortunately, they were so laser-focused on the Phantom, the Silver Seraph never got an invite to the new party. It was quietly dropped after just 4 years, with only 1,570 cars ever built, which, ironically, is why some die-hard Rolls enthusiasts see the Seraph as the last true Rolls-Royce. Sure, it's got German tech sprinkled here and there, but at its heart, it's pure British class. Handmade in Crewe, just like Rolls always were. And honestly, it's a real shame it didn't stick around as long as its Bentley-Arnage sibling. Maybe that's actually fitting. After all, Seraph means angelic, like a star. And you know what they say about stars, the ones that burn twice as bright, shine half as long.